Welcome back to the rest of the story. Yep, it is official. It's cold out. I mean, cold is cold enough when you get below freezing, but to go. If anyone wants to see me get stuck with a gator, I just got stuck with a gator. I forgot I had that in there. I thought I cut it out. Don't get me wrong. The gator does a lot better than the Kawasaki Mule ever did as far as traction and getting around to odd places. And uh, to be fair, we were pretty hard on that mule too. But it definitely held its own. And this gator in itself is a bit, well, much more of a machine. Between the suspension on it, I mean, power, suspension, traction, and well, it's a gas, so it actually goes about, was it top out at 45? I think it governs out about 46 because it definitely has more snuff there, but they limit you. So a lot better than the Kawasaki. The Kawasaki was a diesel that was governed at 25 miles an hour, so definitely going from the mule to the gator. It seems like you were going mock chicken the first few times we were running around with the gator. I mean, the four-wheelers, they do about 55, but the gator definitely feels much different than riding around in a four-wheeler, especially with the cab gator. Um, Days like this, plus rainy days, are a big reason as to why my dad went and bought a gator, a side-by-side with a cab on it, because we would have liked to use the mule more throughout the year. We did. We used it year-round, but let's be honest, I don't care how heavy you're dressed and everything else like that, boots, overalls, whatever. 25 miles an hour, or let's just say 15 miles an hour in 0 degree weather, when it's bitter cold out like this, you get cold, and you get cold really quick. And this ride overall, I think I was out here for 30 minutes. So, I mean, I was tearing around the field for quite a while. So, as far as the weather and everything else that's kind of on my mind, yeah, it's kind of throwing back to more of what winter was like a few years ago. The last 3 or 4, well, at least the last 3. Don't get me wrong, we've had a few instances in the last, well, since 14, where we've had enough snow where we've had to plow before. I mean, last year we did too, but I think we only plowed once all winter last year. That memory serves me right. And from the current weather forecast, it's not going away anytime soon. We're supposed to stay down in the teens and the single digits, and I mean it's below zero outside right now as I'm talking to you, and I'm really not bothered by that. I actually wanted a good hard freeze to get the ground, that whole freeze thaw effect that you get when the ground gets frozen really hard. Plus, it does knock down any of the bugs for the crops. If you have a mild year, that's what can kind of roll over into the next year. If winter is too mild, where it doesn't get cold enough to kill any of the, what am I trying to say? It's not the bugs, but it's the eggs or whatever else. Was it the larvae? Was it the corn borer? You can have some pretty bad insect pressure the following year. I mean, we had that. Oh, it might have been 13. It was one of these last handful of years here where the bug pressure was a little bit more prevalent. But then again, you can look at 2018, and we had a really nice growing year all the way up until the finish line. And then in the last stretch of the growing season, we got that tar spot, and we had stand issues and corn going down. And don't get me wrong, we had some of the healthier looking corn around. I'm not saying that the corn directly around us was having standing issues either, but I was also told about some ground that was like 25, 35 miles east of here, and I actually, well, it's kind of alarming, but I did buy a few bags of a certain variety of corn that yields awesome. I mean, it was running The rumor has it was that it was flat out on the ground. I mean, there was hardly any standing stalks in the field as you looked across it. The guys in that area that had that corn that was down that flat, they were going through and harvesting it with grain platforms. I mean, they were completely bypassing your regular corn head because it was a lost cause. And then by using a grain head, combining, harvesting it with a grain head, they were averaging about 250 to 300 bushels to the acre on corn that was flat on the ground. Now, imagine what kind of potential that would have whatever, um, if that corn didn't fall over. I haven't heard any reports of what the corn was running on the farms that had gotten a shot of fungicide, and I'll be honest with you, I was also told that fungicide was the deciding factor for a lot of that. Myself, and really our farms in general, we don't do the fungicide very often at all, and be completely honest, we are really just starting to get into it where we're starting to utilize more of that stuff. Between fungicide and side dressing and hydrous, we're doing a lot more now since 14, since my grandpa was here and around, than when we were doing when grandpa was here, because grandpa, no offense to any of my older viewers, my older farmers, but sometimes when you farmed for 40, 50 years and you get up to 80 years old or so, your willingness to change is pretty well non-existent. That was how my grandpa was towards changing seed varieties or seed brands. Grandpa planted Pioneer seed for the largest share of his farming career. In the last 2 or 3 years, we ended up switching over to DeKalb. And I've told this story a couple times before. We gained 30 bushels to the acre. I'm not exaggerating. I am being wholeheartedly honest here. We gained 30 bushels to the acre just by switching from Pioneer to DeKalb. That was pretty consistent yield earnings gains. Our farms back when we were milking 150 bushels to the acre, and this is my grandpa talking. This is from an older generation. Grandpa was perfectly content with 150 bushels to the acre. I mean, that's pretty much what we ran with Pioneer. I mean, 170 bushels to the acre, and oh my gosh, I mean, we were really rolling in the money. Anymore now, 170 bushels to the acre is a failed crop, and anything that's really less than 190, and I'm usually overall disappointed, and I'm trying to dissect what all happened and what we need to be doing different to be turning more of a profit. Anymore nowadays, if you're not aiming for 200 bushels to the acre, I mean, maybe I should put out a disclaimer and say this area in general. I mean, I imagine most people are aiming for a lot higher. I imagine out in some of the fringe areas, 150, 120 bushels to the acre corn is profit, or you're in the area of breaking even and making money. I mean, I've heard this between Kansas and the Dakotas or wherever else. But in this area, 200 bushels to the acre really is expected anymore, and it kind of seems like all the inputs and everything else are priced accordingly. You got to be on your game when you're farming anymore. When it's not just throwing seed out in the ground and hoping for the best. You got to be aware of what you're putting out as far as your fertilizer, your chemicals, what your ground is capable of doing, what kind of weed pressure you have. I have some ground that's got a bad weed issue. It was taken well taken care of with last year when we sprayed it with dicamba, and I had zero weed pressure altogether. That whole field did great. The year before that, I had it in corn, and we ended up having to go through and do an additional pass. We made 2 passes, and the 2 passes of spray did not knock out the weeds. They were still coming up above the corn. And we ended up going through and making a 3rd pass where we basically just I think they brought down, it was a 120 or a 90, I think it was a 120-foot boom sprayer. It was try to reduce the amount of passes as much as we could. And they went through and they sprayed the whole farm down a third time, and that did take care of the weed issues. But going forward, you're definitely knowing that, okay, the weeds are going to be pretty persistent through the whole season. So you got to hit them with both barrels at the beginning of the season. I mean, there once was a time where we used to be able to hit our crops with a one pass spray plan, and it worked. It knocked the weeds back, killed them, knocked them out where we didn't have the weeds coming up, and our crops did great, looked great, whatever. That's quickly becoming a thing of the past. We're back to a two-pass system. Don't really like running the sprayer over the ground as much as we have to, but we've also have gone through a year here. Oh, what was it? About 3 or 4 years ago now. I think it was three. Yeah, about 3 years. It was 2016, where the chemicals just didn't work that year, and then trying to harvest corn with weeds standing in the rows made for a very long harvest. It was just aggravating. I mean, you kept plugging up the corn head and having to get out, dig it out, and trying to run 100 feet, and depends on the fields you're in and everything else like that. Some fields were fine, so other fields where it was increasingly worse. But and again, it all plays back into what you know, knowing your farms, knowing your operation, and knowing what your ground can really do. Talking about the crops, the next big thing that we're probably going to be working on, Dad and Ryan are working on the truck. From the sounds of it, the truck is getting close to being done. You got to go to Ryan's channel to really know what's all going on there. The next plan, I do know they're planning on working on the trailer. Once the trailer gets done, that should free up some room in the machine shed. I'm going to go through and get the oil changed in the 46, the 82, fuel oil filters, and the hydraulic oil filters. Go through, clean the tractors out, cabs, and everything else. I mean, it'll be February before I really get this done. Yeah, it's kind of early in the year. I used to change the oil like late March, early April. But the plans are to go through, get those done. And I want to get the corn planter back out probably sometime in March. I got to go through and check all the chains on it again. We had a bad chain on us last year that took us a little bit of diagnosing to get figured out. It was rusted on one link, and it was jumping as it was going around the sprocket, and that was giving us a inconsistent population. And your whole season starts with planting, so if you slip up on the first day of planting, you're gonna have a long summer, and that's gonna affect you clear into harvest. Emergence is a very big thing, plus seed spacing. It definitely showed in the field that we had it. It still yielded well, but that's also partly because we do plant a flex year across all of our ground. I know some guys that are pushing yields, they do the fixed year and then run a higher population. I mean, I do have 15 acres that it's nicer ground. I'm planning on running that at 40,000 seeds per acre, but I'm also going to be feeding it nitrogen throughout the season. I'm not hitting it with all the nitrogen at the beginning of the season. It's going to be getting 2 separate shots right at planting between the planter and the first pass with the sprayer. And then it's going to get side dressed with the cultivator, and then it's going to get top dressed when it's about shoulder height. So I mean, it's going to have plenty of nitrogen there to perform, just as long as it rains, because that is our agronomist's favorite get out of jail free card. Is what's it going to do? Well, weather-wise, as long as it rains, you'll be fine. So, all right. I guess that's enough of me talking for now. I don't know what happened with my video here. It looks like it froze. Stay tuned. Hopefully things will start picking up here a little bit, trying to get more odd jobs going. It is largely just trying to do chores right now and keeping everything thawed out and everything else. We do have a couple cattle waters that were freezing up on us that was giving us a little bit of trouble. But I never seem to have my camera on me when we're thawing them out. So, at least I've been carrying my camera with me here in my pocket here lately. So, alright. Stay tuned for more videos in the future. Thanks for watching. Take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I will talk to you guys later.
And now you know the rest of the story.